Okay, guys, welcome to Randy's World. This is going to be actually my first podcast for Randy's World, and my name is Randy V. V is for Vigiani, if anybody wants to know the last name, but I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur since I was probably about 5 years old, and I started my first company when I was 19 years old. I'm 35 now, so I've got about 17, 18 years in business. Right now, my businesses are Airbnb, and I have one that's called Rav Rides. It's a rental car enterprise that's up to 25 cars now, doing rentals in the Denver area. It's getting big. It's going to turn into a social car club and exotic car storage. I'm really happy with the way that things are going. And then before that, I did a moving company that I franchised and sold in Florida. So that was a long history of 17 years of business just in one company there. So you can find me, Randy's World, on YouTube. You can find me, Randy Vigiani, on Facebook, Metal Guy 85 on Instagram, and that's pretty much the main places that I'm at right now. And so I'm here with John, and we're going to do a little thing here, and I'm going to let him interview me, and then I'm going to ask him a couple questions that he's not prepared for as well. So I'm ready to get started. Let's do it.
Awesome, Randy. Thanks for having me. And anybody can check me out at Talk Cash Pod. That's at Talk Cash Pod on Instagram and Twitter. My personal Instagram is at Johnny Deebs. You can hit me up there too. Any questions that you might have. But definitely tune into the podcast. I think Randy and I here will be able to put a good show together, and we're looking forward to being able to teach you guys some things, hopefully.
All right. So I wanted to see if we could jog our memories a little bit and remember how we met. I know we have a mutual friend. His name is Mike. And then I know that I didn't even know you were an entrepreneur when we met. It was probably when I hosted an entrepreneurial lunch where we really started talking about business and things like that and where you were at, where I was at.
Yeah. I think, it was last summer or something we met. And I don't know, it popped my head around Denver quite often. But I like the 9 to 5. You know, there was a guy at that lunch that said he liked the 9 to 5 too. But the thing is, I don't want to do that forever, right? And so what I try to do is just funnel all my money out of the 9 to 5 into the stock market, into real estate. And then also I'm trying to start a little side hustle with e-commerce or something like that. But been thinking about that for a while.
What's your 9 to 5?
I'm in sales. So I work for a tech company called AvePoint. I'm in sales. I sell this software to companies that want to get more money or efficiency out of their Microsoft Office investment. So Microsoft Office Suite and such like that.
That's cool. Have you been in sales for a long time? I know that's probably one of the best things to prepare you for the entrepreneur world is just you're going to have to sell yourself and sell your business, and that's the way you grow is through sales. That's the backbone of your business.
Absolutely, man. I think some people are natural salespeople, but I think it is a skill that you kind of have to craft a little bit as well. And I was a psych major in college, and then I kind of fell into sales a little bit, which a lot of people do once they graduate or once they're looking for jobs. And I loved it right away. And I was using kind of my psychology degree and just my social aspect of being very extroverted and working with people. And so I've liked sales a lot. It is kind of high stress, so that's kind of one of the reasons I'd like to get out of it, when I'm 40, 45 or something, and at that point just be managing my own businesses. That's kind of the goal at that point.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I was the opposite. I was one of the quietest kids in school. My mom said I was very shy, and so that kind of just instilled in me that I was shy. I just always thought I was shy, and even now I'm more on the introverted side maybe, but I had to force it. In business, I had to pick up the phone and call customers and close deals, and after about 10, 15 years of doing that, you have pretty much opened up into an extrovert. I think it just changes you.
So you kind of forced yourself to get out of the shell, or what made you even want to start businesses to begin with?
So my dad was an entrepreneur. When I was growing up, he was cutting logs and selling them firewood, was his first thing, and he evolved that into a tree service. But when he started, I was 5, 6 years old, and he liked to use me as slave labor, I guess.
Sure.
So I was stacking the wood, and even when I started school, I'd come home and I'd be cutting wood, and then I'd go to the pool or whatever after that. But I think when I was 5, I was bagging up his kindling that would fall on the ground, and I would bag it up and sell it to his customers for like $2 a bag, and so I might have had it in me, and I just evolved from there. And when I was older, I had no fear of starting a business. I just knew like that's what he did. It didn't like even dawn on me that like people have that obstacle, that afraid to start kind of thing.
So is it safe to say you didn't even think that there was any alternative versus starting your own business?
Well, I got a job, like I was excited at 15 years old to work at a grocery store and get my first real job after just working for my dad for like 10 years before that.
Uh-huh.
And it sucked. Like the paychecks were so small and you're not getting handed cash all the time. And that was kind of like a good feeling when you're working for your dad. He's just handing you money. And I don't know, I just wanted more. Like there's no way a company was ever going to pay me what I knew I was capable of like achieving. So I knew I had to start my own business, and it's just been a fun ride. Like everything I've done like lawn service, tree service, the moving company, gold buying, the Airbnb, the rental cars, and getting into, wherever the challenge lies, right? So like the podcast and the YouTube channel, and just growing up like a shy kid, that's all real challenging for me. So I just cannot always go against that and try to better myself.
Okay. Living in the uncomfort zone a little bit there.
Yeah, and I fell in love with the self-development world when I was in like a truck with this kid. I was moving furniture, stuck with this guy for like 20 hours on the road because I would take the long distance moves like across the country for like the first 5-6 years in the moving business. I was afraid to let anybody else drive the truck, so I was like the one guy that would take the long distance moves. And this kid was listening to Joel Osteen, which I couldn't really stand, like all of the, I'm not a big like religious person, so I couldn't really stand all the religious stuff. I was like, you got anything else? And he's like, I got Jim Rohn.
Okay.
And I was like, well, what's that? And so I heard this really charismatic guy named Jim Rohn and just fell in love with like, whatever his cultivating, I think it was cultivating character was his, big thing that we listened to for like 6 hours straight, and I just like
there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, eventually I was just like, all right, what else is like this? And I found more and more in seminars and books, and kept going and going. And that's what I like to do most. If I could just get paid to go into seminars and read books, that'd be sweet. But you gotta sometimes do a little more than that.
Sure. Would you ever want to do some type of personal speaking at one of those types of conferences?
It definitely scares me to be up on stage speaking. Like the closest I come to that is like I've done in front of my own teams of like 20 or whatever, setting up meetings and speaking to them. But I think that's where the growth lies, and I want to get there and accomplish that and like beat some of that fear. It might never go away. I know when I was like in high school wrestling, every time I got out in the ring, that fear like never went away. Like you're just in fight or flight mode, but it's worth it. At the end, you feel good about it.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think in high school, I was a little nervous to start doing that. And then I think I just started laughing at myself, right? Like, I don't know. I tried to not take myself too seriously. And once you can do that, and then I kind of like added this like little hard exterior shell where it's like, I want to do this. I don't know. It's weird.
You've done some public speaking then?
I haven't done any public speaking, but I'm just thinking in terms of like class projects, whenever it's time to present. Work presentations, right? Like most of the time I'm presenting to people that are like chief technology officers, chief information officers, directors of IT. These guys are like 40, 50 years old, probably understand the software or maybe the problem that we're trying to solve, maybe a little bit better than I do. And then like I'm a 25, 26 at this time when I was getting started in sales, year-old kid that's like telling them where to invest anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000. So I just had to get over any type of fear at that point. And then now I would say I enjoy it.
So you're ready to go, man, ready to hop on stage, it sounds like.
I think I would like to. I would like to a lot, but then like we notice our nervous tics and habits, right? Like when you're watching yourself be recorded and you're just like, God, I hate that so much.
See, I never watch myself. That's one thing I don't do because I probably never post anything. I'm just like, one take. I don't even want to do 2 takes, but it's going straight on there. Whatever the platform is, I'm not even going to look at it. And I'll just like, usually it's all good feedback that you get from your peers, and like unless you're doing some kind of controversial subject or whatever, which I am fine with taking a bunch of shit too.
I think it's a good mix, right? Like at the end of the day, if you're doing that raw footage, then like you're coming off very genuine. You're yourself. It's not edited, and that shines through on the camera or the microphone or whatever, and people tend to respect that at the end of the day.
So I noticed you said you might stay in the 9 to 5 until you're 45 years old. I just couldn't imagine it, man. Is there anything that might change that where you're going to go all in on business?
I mean, at the end of the day, I want financial independence. I'd like my businesses, my investments to be able to pay for my lifestyle, and then at that point, or not my lifestyle, but like my living expenses. And then at that point, any extra money I have, which would be my 9 to 5, it would be coming through and just funding extra travel, houses for myself, any toys really. And I mean, the problem would be if there's not enough time in the day, right? Like right now I don't really have too many responsibilities, so it's pretty easy to say that like I can do both, right? I can burn the candle at all ends. But if I become a family man or something, right? Get married, wife's gonna want some time to herself, and then at the same time, like if I have kids, that could change all that too. But with sales, like if I get a little more into the career, then honestly, I'll do a little traveling, and I love the idea of being able to travel for work and meet with customers on site. From that point on, I'd probably try to go back into management. So I fell in love with sales, and I like coaching people.
So you don't work in an office then right now? You're just kind of able to work from home, or?
I work remote now because of the coronavirus pandemic. But at the same time, like I like being in the office. Like it's really weird. I like being around people. I like talking to people. I like being able to banter back and forth when going to the water cooler to the bathroom. So those are all things I enjoy. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to going back to like a hybrid type model.
And then how did you grow up? Like, were your parents entrepreneurs?
My dad is a doctor. My mom's a nurse. My dad he has 2 or 3 rental properties. And then when I was younger, I didn't really understand that much. But as I got older and I got into personal finance, probably like 4 years ago, that's when I just started like peppering him with questions. Like, what do the numbers look like? What's the process look like? He'd always invested in the stock market before that. And a lot of his family, because he comes from a really big family, are entrepreneurs too, starting their own businesses. I have an aunt that's a consultant and consults with UNICEF. So I don't know. I wouldn't say I was raised in entrepreneurship, but I saw people taking their 9 to 5 money and putting it elsewhere that it works for them.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned your dad having the rental properties, and I feel like that is kind of now becoming like the old model, just to rent long term to people. I know it's always going to exist and there's a need for it, but ever since I started doing the Airbnb, I noticed that there's a pretty big difference between long-term rent and short-term rent. And so with my Airbnb business, I don't even own the homes. I'm able to lease for that same long-term rent that they would lease to a normal tenant. Okay. But then I take the short-term, and I feel like short-term is always more valuable than the long-term because you're not putting a deposit down. You're just coming at a convenient 3 days to 2 weeks or whatever usually, and then like that just becomes more valuable. So I'm making, usually I think the difference on average is about $1,000 per month per unit, and sometimes you're spending like $300,000 on a house to make $300 to $500 a month, and I feel like that's becoming like the old model now, and I think Airbnb is going to be the way in the future.
I like that a lot, like a little bit of Airbnb arbitrage, so to speak. So I didn't know that you were doing that. I thought you bought all these houses, and that's the biggest barrier to entry right there, right? Like, so you are renting them. And then are you working with the landlords to do they get a cut of the profit, or do they know that you're leasing them out on short-term rentals?
There's some benefits to the homeowners. One of them would be like the home is going to stay in showroom condition the whole time. And because you're cleaning it to a high standard in between rentals just to keep your reviews good. Mm-hmm. And another benefit would be like they're kind of leasing to a business or somebody who's making money by leasing from them. So their rent's getting paid on time and they're not chasing down rents. That's not as much of a worry. Yeah. And so there's those couple benefits. And I don't know, what was your other like question about it? Like,
so do they ever ask for like a kickback or some home improvement, right. anything like that where it's like they know that you're taking the money from them, or not taking the money, but taking the property from them and making more profit? Does that ever cause some like contention or anything?
I
like
might
that?
actually give them another 100 or two over market value sometimes, but that's the goal, is to try to negotiate it. Usually I'm getting less deposit because I think I'm a good negotiator. That's one of my strongest skills. So I'm negotiating like, instead of a $2,500 deposit, $1,000 deposit on every unit. And then I'm negotiating like 2 weeks free up front, so I could try to make that 2 weeks worth of rent money, like $1,000 before my lease even starts. So there's like a couple little tricks that I've learned in there. One of my favorite little hacks that I don't know if anybody's doing on Airbnb is to rent out the garage separately to somebody who's storing like a nice car or motorcycle or something for an extra like $150 a month to kind of cover your utilities. And so I'm just learning all these cool little new tricks, even theming the properties. I have one that's like Monopoly themed, one that's like a 90s theme. And so that's just been like the way that I have fun with it, is I'm decorating it in a different style of it. And instead of just buying cute little pictures to put up on the wall, I'm buying like memorabilia and things like that.
And then that attracts extra clientele or new people, helps your property stand out a little bit.
Yeah, I think it does stand out and might rent for a little higher that way. And you mentioned the barrier to entry, so you're not having to wait for a 30-day closing process. You're not having to depend on your credit at all. You can have horrible credit and still, it's really, the barrier to entry is being able to communicate with the landlord of the property, the homeowner, and getting them to like you, trust you with the property. And that's the main barrier to entry. And then you're not even dealing with the major problems of a homeowner, like the roof goes bad, that's $10,000, or the septic drain field needs
the landlord takes care of all that.
They have to take care of the big stuff, but another benefit is that maybe you'll take care of the small stuff. Like if an AC filter needs to be changed, that could be out of pocket, or something small like a faucet or something goes bad, you're not having to call the landlord because you're going to do a little increased work for them. So that's another way you're telling them, like, hey, I'm going to be doing all your landlord duties as like kind of a free property manager in order to keep them from raising the rent because they know you're making money.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's awesome. So what's your current portfolio look like then? Because, well, at least in terms of the Airbnbs, because I know you have a little bit of a car fleet as well, and we can kind of get into that in a bit.
Yeah,
what's the Airbnb?
Airbnbs, I've not been growing it at the speed that I've been growing the rental car company, because it's just a little bit easier to grow the rental car company.
Sure.
Because Colorado here is so regulated. So there's a lot of cities that, like Denver, you really can't work in, because I think they have a misconception that it's displacing homeowners, even though we do need that tourism here, and that's really strengthening our economy.
And you're not even displacing homeowners with your process right here. I know that's not like the typical way, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's got to be some city council meeting where you could go and preach your case or something.
Yeah, and I'm not yet that heavily involved in politics and don't want to be at this time. But I definitely think that you're right. They're not really displaced because a homeowner might be just staying in an Airbnb while he builds a new house, or is just in between moving. And so there's a lot of needs for homeowners to be in the Airbnbs as well, not just tourists. So there's so many different reasons besides tourism, for sure.
That makes sense.
So my portfolio, I have two of them in like the Castle Rock area.
Okay.
I live in Thornton, and I was Airbnb-ing where I live to offset my mortgage. It's like a freedom hack, right?
Sure.
So, or not mortgage, but my rent payments.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can actually make like $2,000 a month where I live just by renting out the extra rooms and extra spaces.
And do you rent that place too? That's through the same exact process?
Yeah, and even though the city that I live in, Thornton, has kind of turned south on me, and they said no more short-term rentals less than 30 days, I can still get 30-plus day rentals on Airbnb.
Sure.
And then turn them into longer-term rentals that are furnished with no deposit and charge a little bit more.
Okay.
So I'm still making a good amount of money, like $1,000 per bedroom or more.
$1,000 per bedroom. That's awesome.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I got two more, one in Golden and one in Breckenridge.
Okay.
And then I got three in Florida, and one of them I'm actually flying right after this meeting to Florida to go finalize.
We'd love to hear it.
And so I'll have three now in Florida.
Tampa, watch out. Randy V's coming down.
Yeah, I like that area. They're really easy on the regulations, and like right now the market's going crazy for short-term rentals, and everything's staying booked up 100%, even better than out here. I'm fighting a little harder to keep things booked here.
So the regulations are easier. Obviously Florida is kind of like your typical tourist destination spot, but like people love coming up here to the mountains and such. And the Breckenridge one, that's a rental as well.
Yeah, and Breckenridge from the pandemic, like, was one of the most hardcore places, closing their bars down early. So people weren't going to visit there as much. The ski season was kind of weak for, like, not being able to just come there and pay for a lift ticket and stuff like that. And so I think Airbnb works even better in the areas that are not so heavily tourist dependent, because you'll have more people just visiting their families or like in between houses and whatnot. So that one I think struggles more than the rest of them.
Really? Okay. Do you look for location? Like, how important is location? Maybe if you can think of like 2 or 3 key items you look for when sourcing these deals.
Yeah, I look for less problems. That's the main thing I look for.
In the home.
If you have like a duplex or something like that, or if you're working apartment deals, and I'm not even working any apartment deals, is like you want to not piss off your neighbors, right? So that's like one problem that you can have. I had one in Ohio that I was managing remotely, and I was having a real hard time keeping kids from the inner city coming out to the woodsy area where I was and having parties, and the neighbors would just be like calling me at 1 a.m. like, hey, they're having a party. Can you tell them to be quiet? And we're mad. This is happening once a month, and they basically called the city. They called the mayor. They had like, I don't know, somebody higher up in the city calling me like, oh, we might have to shut you down, or if you have another party. And I'm like, I'm a victim here too. Like these guys, and the cops wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't throw them out. Like they were being kind of weak on it and stuff. So I just eventually just closed that one down and like eliminated the problems. But I look for like neighbors that are a little further apart and anything, no HOAs, try to avoid all those kind of problems. That's my main thing that I look for.
Okay. So when you're picking a place, that's pretty much it, right? Like you just don't want to deal with any BS.
Yep, and cities that are less regulated, cities that don't even require a license to have a short-term rental and stuff like that are my favorite.
Okay, great. So you said it's Lakeland in Florida, right?
Lakeland is where I lived for 15 years and had the moving company there. And St. Pete is where I have one just because I love that area.
Sure.
And actually a landlord that I work with in Colorado had the St. Pete offer for me. They have a investment property there. And that's one cool thing is if you're working with an investor that has multiple houses, they might see that you're doing well and handling their stuff good for them. So they'll keep giving you more deals as they purchase more homes. Yeah,
so that I was actually going to ask that too. Like where you're sourcing the deals, where do you find them? Do you just look on Craigslist? Do you look on Zillow? Like where are you finding these houses to rent?
Yeah, originally I started with Craigslist. I haven't had to use it anymore because I think the browsing experience on Facebook Marketplace is pretty good, and so I just kind of stick with that.
Okay. Heavily on the Facebook game. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Airbnb, do you want to expand that more? You mentioned that like it hasn't been growing as quick as Turo.
Yeah, definitely. My plan by the end of the year is to turn both companies into $1 million company per year. So that means like if I have 8 units now, it would be about 30 units to be pulling in $1 million a year on Airbnb.
Okay.
That's just my rough guess. And then for the rental car industry, I have 25, and I'm guessing now about 50 to 60 units would be $1 million business.
Okay.
And so that's kind of like the journey I want to document over the next year. For my shows and stuff is just that struggle to get to the $1 million mark on each business and trying to do both of them at once and stuff. So even if I fall short like 50% on both, I'm still going to be pulling in $1 million a year, right? So
right.
That's kind of why I set my goal a little higher than normal. Not like ridiculously impossible high, but I think it's important to set your goals high because if you fall short, you're not in starvation mode. You're still in abundance mode when you fall short of huge goals.
Absolutely. That's awesome. All right. So, and then people can follow that at Randy's World or on YouTube. Follow Randy's World, subscribe, and that's where you can watch that.
Yeah, that's going to be the process, man. I just want to document that process. And I also am a big advocate of freedom, right? So I go on a lot of adventures and I try to automate these businesses to where I'm not doing all the work. I'm trying to work on the business instead of in the business. So I'm not like actually doing all the cleanings at all the units, right? Because I couldn't possibly be everywhere at once, and I'm not cleaning all the cars because there's too many for just me now. So I'm building the teams up and doing the whole thing, and then trying to get the brand awareness there through the YouTube show and everything.
So do you need help at all in any way? Like it sounds like you're building a team and you're growing. Are you looking to bring people on? Are you looking to scale it all?
Yeah, definitely during the scaling process, I'm constantly trying to hire, and people just, I don't know, I attract some of the best people. They find me, and they just start working with me. And my videographer is actually back in the corner. You can't see him right now, but he just came to me about a month ago, and within like one meeting of having dinner with him, he's like, I'm quitting my job. I'm coming to work with you. And so,
damn.
And we've just been like best friends ever since that.
Okay. That's awesome. Okay. So, I mean, Facebook also a good place to reach out to Randy here. If you guys are looking to get on the team at all, if you're looking for, so it sounds like most people are going all in on the entrepreneurship after they meet you. Cause I think Mo mentioned kind of the same thing.
Yeah. And I do like a little bit of business coaching and life coaching kind of stuff on the side. And that's where I see myself in like the next 5 years after I build and sell or build and just have these stabilized to where I'm not as involved anymore. Then I think I'm just going to be doing like video courses and more coaching, and because I just enjoy that the most, man. And if I could convince somebody to quit their job and be an entrepreneur full time, like I did it so long ago and I can never go back, then I just think it's the way to go, because then you're supplying jobs. You're not taking them from the marketplace. You're building like the marketplace.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So next couple years here, we're trying to build and grow both these businesses to about $1 million each. And then at that point also scaling the teams. And then you're trying to maybe take a step back into a little bit more of a mentorship role.
Yeah, definitely. I think the coaching and maybe even be up on that stage one day. I'm not sure, but
we'll work towards it, man.
If it doesn't work out, it's fine. I'm just having fun doing it all.
You're getting a taste for the camera and the microphone now, and you know, if you like it, who knows, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like you tiptoe into anything. It seems like you're cannonballing in all the time.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of like Conor McGregor's stuff on YouTube.
I love Conor McGregor.
He's actually a really smart dude. He's not just a fighter, but he's got some really motivational stuff about his story. And one thing he does say is like, I'm all in on everything. I can't do his accent. Like go all in basically is his advice, and he's all in on his fighting, obviously, because he's the world champion. He's all in. He's got like a whiskey brand that's supposedly beating Jameson.
That's doing such a good job recently. Yeah, it's crazy.
His clothing, he's got like his clothing style is amazing. Like I wish I would learn how to dress, but that's one of my weaknesses for sure. Is style.
That's part of the freedom, dude. Right? You dress comfortably,
right? And sometimes I'm dressed in sweatpants, and I gotta maybe cut that out a little bit more.
I remember you had the sweatsuit earlier at that dinner in January. It was like I don't even know what it was. There was like flames on it or something like that.
Neil Strauss from the game would call that peacocking, right?
I love peacocking. Dude. You saw me do it on a Friday, right? Like I'm gonna wear a crazy ass shirt and some khakis. Like I'll keep it simple on the bottom.
Yeah, and so we're both single guys. Anybody watching? So keep that in mind, ladies.
Yeah, I mean, so you're also trying to build a Facebook group as well, a little bit into that, right? With like you're trying to mix like entrepreneurship and dating. Is that something that you're also focusing time on, or is that just something to like kind of bring people together?
Yeah, I think it works in a lot of ways because I'm trying to grow my network and building teams and building a following. All right, and then I guess we're kind of running short on time on the video. No, battery's getting low. So yeah, that's part of the problems when we're filming and doing stuff and
always on the go.
Not used to that stuff, but yeah, with the dating and entrepreneurs thing. It's hard to date as an entrepreneur because you're not looking for somebody else that has like their own career path as like a doctor or lawyer because they're in school and they're not like freedom oriented. So, and I also want somebody that can build this empire with me, that'd be like side by side a partner and have like, I think it's more intimacy and a deeper relationship that way.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So Randy's single. I guess I'm single too, right? We're putting ourselves out there. What does a typical week look like? If you could just kind of summarize that for anybody that's listening and wants to ditch the 9-to-5 and get into entrepreneurship. Like,
yeah. So for me, there's a constant battle of like, fires that I have to put out on a daily basis, people that need me for things, and then, the daily workload, and then trying to also build on top of that. So working on things that build your business, like buying cars or acquiring new Airbnbs and things like that while you're trying to run your existing business. And that's kind of like the constant struggle of pulling you both directions. And you just have to learn how to focus on, all right, I know that buying a car is going to make me more money than fixing like a tech problem in the next like 6 months. So like put my focus towards that first. And then if I have some time left over for the small problems, I'll do that.
Okay, so we got kind of the near term goals down. I'm huge into goal setting. I can only imagine that you are too. What do the next, I guess we'll say 5 years look like?
And I always struggled with that goal setting, and I'm not the type that like takes a lot of notes or looks at the paper. But I think it is like a great move to sit down at least once every like quarter, maybe 6 months, and make sure you're redefining and reimagining your goals.
Sure.
And having some kind of like thing to strive for to keep you kind of on track. And so like my 5-year goal, a lot of it has to do with, as I'm 35, like I want to find that partner that I want to build with.
Sure.
I do have those old school values of like kids and marriage and stuff, even though like my parents didn't have that perfect. And I kind of want to just kind of make up for those mistakes and have a tighter family unit and stuff like that. But spiritually, it really helped to like spend about 5 years like trying to evolve spiritually. So like things aren't as a necessity anymore. Like I don't have to make $10 million. I don't have like those arbitrary goals of just like money driven stuff. It's more like, how can I bring people together? And that's like what this is all for. All this business stuff is like, I'm bringing people together for deep relationships, and the dating for entrepreneurs and all that stuff is creating more relationships, with the people that I meet and everything. And that's just like what I feel like is important. So that's like my 5-year goals is just to have the deepest relationships in the future.
Okay. Do you see it all happening here in Denver?
Everywhere I go, I think it's happening. I think it's just like up to you, right, to create these relationships. A lot of people like wait for somebody to call them or invite them to do something, but I really think you got to be on the ball with that stuff, inviting people and creating these epic moments on your own. Like that's up to you to do.
I love to hear that, dude. I'm there with you.
What about you though, man? What about 5 years? What are you working on?
Oh, let's see. 5 years here. Definitely want to do another real estate deal here. I've only done one so far. I think that's something we got to talk about a little more there, because I like the idea of this apartment renting and then doing the short-term Airbnb on top of that. So who knows where that could go, but I'd like to have a little bit of a real estate portfolio. I don't know if I have, again, like you said, like an arbitrary number. But I always said I wanted to be a millionaire before I was 30. I'm 28 now. I've kind of adjusted that a little bit, but within the next 5 years, by the time I'm 33, I absolutely think that's possible, at least first $1 million down. So grow the real estate business a little bit, keep plummeting money into the stock market. I really like investing in the stock market. I do a little bit of option trading, but for the most part, I'm a long-term investor. And then I'd like to get like an e-commerce business running too, because that's pretty self-sustaining a lot of the time, where I don't have to do too much, right? Like maybe
products, like shirts or something, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, so maybe it's drop shipping, maybe it's Amazon, but also like this podcast, what I'd like to do is grow that. So kind of reaching out to the community as well, and then eventually get some merch going here. I love the talk cash or don't speak, like saying statement. That's how I answer my phone all the time. So I'd like to turn that into a bit of a brand, and then maybe offer some courses in each of these categories a little more in depth. So kind of want to get the experience under my belt and then offer the courses. So even as I set those goals, they're a little scattered. That's kind of how I like work though. But like I'm a big person who writes things down. So I would say grow real estate, get an extra side business going, see how much we can grow that, and see how much we can grow this podcast. And to do that, people, we need you to share it. So go follow or subscribe to Randy's World. Go follow or add Randy as a friend on Facebook. He's super active on there. And he posts some controversial stuff too. I like it. Like you get people polarized in the comment section. And it's good because some people, you just know where people stand.
Yeah, masks off. Yeah, let's
Exactly. And then for me, Twitter, Instagram, at TalkCashPod, at Johnny Deebs. Go follow those. Subscribe to the podcast at TalkCashPod. Well, the Talk Cash Pod podcast. Go subscribe to Randy's World and share these with a friend, right? Like, if you're enjoying it, you probably know one or two people that will probably enjoy it as well.
Yeah, and this has been a great, first episode, and I know we're both starting off this podcast stuff, and at the end of all of your goals, I know that you got plenty there that will, crush your sales job. You won't have time for that.
Don't let my manager hear
Just
that.
go ahead. Yeah. just fire him. Just give him a reason to go all in on all that other stuff, because like podcast is just by itself will probably be more valuable in like a short amount of time. So like, I'm sure you're going to be crushing it in the next 5 years.
That's the
full-time entrepreneur. I'm positive that's going to happen. Real estate, anything you want, man. And I'm here to help you for sure.
Love to hear it, dude. Well, we'll definitely have to sit down again sometime. We didn't really get into any of the car fleet. And I think that's super interesting there too, because again, like I said, I heard a story later on. Someone listed something on Turo within 45 minutes at least. But we'll save that for another episode. And yeah, it's great talking with you here, Randy. And I hope the listeners enjoy this episode.
Yeah, thanks everybody for listening in. Definitely find us. Randy's World YouTube channel is going to be one of my main focuses going forward. So find me there, subscribe on that thing, and then we're going to have a part 2. So look out for me and Johnny in the future.
Love to hear it, dude. Thanks everybody for listening.